Welcome to another edition of Horse Center, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. We sure had a lot of surprises on the Derby Trail this weekend, but it's no surprise we're here to do Horse Center.
We're here to do Horse Center, Matt. We're not talking about Shelbyville as the saddlebred capital of the world, that's for sure. We're talking about Kentucky Derby. I don't know about you, Matt, but going in, I've had Bolt Doro and Good Magic 1 and 2 on my list from the beginning of the year, or from Breeders' Cup, basically. What's happened recently has only made me strengthen those two as my top two, and neither has raced yet this year. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign for what we're seeing each week on the Derby Trail so far.
Yeah, Brian, I feel exactly the same way. I'm finding it a little bit frustrating because, like you said, I've had those two on top of my polls. I think they're fantastic horses, both of them, but I just want to see them out on the track already.
Well, the good news, Matt, is Fountain of Youth is in a little over a week, I guess a week and a half, and then the week after that is the San Felipe. So hopefully we will see Good Magic. That's the plan anyway. Good Magic in Florida and Bolt Doro soon enough in Southern California. Now, Matt, with some surprises and some big performances in maiden and allowance races, I think we have a lot of new horses emerging now, whether they be more experienced horses winning stakes races or horses making their first or second start of their lives. We have a lot of new shooters, if you will. That's usually reserved for the Preakness, but new horses emerging on the Kentucky Derby list. Let's start in Louisiana. NOLA Fairgrounds, the Risen Star, the first 50 point for the winner, Kentucky Derby prep, and the winner was a 21-1 shot from good old D. Wayne Lukas.
Yeah, it's amazing that you can get 21-1 on D. Wayne, but you certainly did. And we're talking about Bravazzo in here, a horse that had a pretty good record going into the race, and now stands at 3 wins. Had finished second in the Breeders' Futurity as a 2-year-old behind Free Drop Billy, a Calumet homebred, son of Awesome Again. The race kind of turned out to be what handicappers sometimes describe as a merry-go-round race, where once they got out of the gate and got into stride, the top 4 kind of held the positions that they were in all the way around the track, Brian.
Yeah, that as a handicapper, that's the race I enjoyed least of all seeing unfold. And you're right, Matt. Going into the first turn, Snapper Sinclair won the race over Bravazzo. Noble India was third, and Stilled Regard was fourth. The only change to that was Bravazzo nipping Snapper Sinclair at the wire. Now, getting back to Bravazzo, you fans of Oxbow out there, Oxbow certainly was a nice horse a few years ago for Lukas. This is also an Awesome Again, a son of Awesome Again, like Oxbow, and a Calumet horse like Oxbow. So a little something there. Oxbow, like Bravazzo, also had a few races at 2 where he didn't really break through, but he showed some potential. I think that's true with Bravazzo. I saw him a few times last year, Matt. He was not one of the top 22-year-olds in the nation by any stretch of the imagination. His best race, you're right, was that second in the Breeders' Futurity, but he was absolutely no match for Free Drop Billy that day at Keeneland. And then he finished the year with a 10th place finish here at Churchill Downs in the Kentucky Jockey Club. So Bravazzo is a horse that is developing, and Lukas has made a career of running horses at 2 and then getting better at 3. Codex, Charismatic, and more recent horses like Oxbow, Will Take Charge, didn't get it done in the Triple Crown, but he's certainly developed as well. So maybe Bravazzo is one of those type of horses. Awesome Again, obviously a good sire. The one thing I'll say about Bravazzo, both of these performances this year, an allowance at Oaklawn and then the Risen Star Saturday at Fairgrounds, were strong performances, improvement from his 2-year-old year, and he showed some heart to win both because he had to work to get it done.
Yeah, certainly. And you know, I got to take my hat off a little bit to Snapper Sinclair. who I figured was going to be out there helping to set the pace, which he did. But he hung on nicely in this race again with Snapper Sinclair and Bravazzo. I kind of have to put a little asterisk here and see what they're going to do the next time. See how much the racetrack and the tendency to front runners was what got both of them home.
That's right. Yeah, judging by how the race was run, we do have, I think, a little bit more question than with two long shots staying 1-2 basically all the way around. But on the other hand, Noble Indy instilled regard, and even more so, Principe Guillermo just did not step up like we thought they would in here. It's back to the drawing board for all three. By all means, none of the three are out of the Derby picture, but they will need to improve next time out for sure. Speaking of horses that weren't expected to win, I think we got to throw yesterday's winner of the Southwest Stakes, a muddy edition. Lots of rain down in Hot Springs, Arkansas this winter, and it was muddy again yesterday for the Razorback and then the Southwest Stakes. And Matt Marino went off the favorite. You know, I was wrong about Snapper Sinclair because I didn't like him like most, 41-1 in the Risen Star. But I think Marino showed a little bit of what I thought, where he just didn't want to stick around, going a little farther this time. But it was my boy Jack coming up the rail impressively to win the Southwest.
Yeah, and you know, in Southwest Marino, he did not get loose on the lead as we thought was going to be the case. He was pressured most of the way, and coming around the turn into the stretch, he just didn't have very much left in the tank. I guess some of his supporters will say, "Hey, maybe it was the racing surface," and okay, yeah, maybe it was the racing surface, but you know. He wasn't high on my list, and the Southwest certainly doesn't help. My boy Jack, it's the DeSormo brothers winning on the mud. We've seen that scenario before, and a lot of people after the race said, "Hey, you got almost 9-1 here on those connections." Of course, I think they were referring back to Exaggerator from the past, who was a mud lover, and maybe my boy Jack is another one of those, son of Creative Cause. I thought Combatant once again ran a very nice race to get second, up to 12 points on the Derby Trail. The one that got the most, I think, that I'm most interested in again is Sporting Chance, who we both like. Long layoff. For Dwayne Lucas, who typically does not have his horses at 100% coming off a layoff, and he had a tough trip. He got bumper card coming down the stretch, Brian.
Absolutely, Matt. I agree with you. Yeah, Combatant ran, I guess, a similar race. What he had done in the Smarty Jones. Again, he's second. I compared him to another Asmussen horse of last year, Untrapped, and I'll stick with that. I think Combatant's probably not quite top tier Kentucky Derby level, but he looks like a horse who's going to cash a lot of checks, and one to keep an eye on in the future. Yeah, Sporting Chance certainly of the also rans was the one that interests me going in and coming out. He needed the race, and yeah, that incident at the, I guess it was around the 8th pole, was pretty severe. By no means am I suggesting that he would have beaten my boy Jack. But he was really banged pretty hard, and then he finished. We finished with good energy to be third ahead of Marino. So look for Sporting Chance to improve off that. Also, trainer Dwayne Lucas. So Lucas is starting to stack his bullets for the Kentucky Derby, which is nice to see for the 82-year-old legend. As for the winner, Matt, this was a turf horse. As a 2-year-old, he ran several races on the turf. He's a stakes winner on the turf. Kind of a middle-of-the-pack, decent performance, but a middle-of-the-pack performance in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, which really looks like a loaded race. Horses that have run in that race are coming back and running well. All those horses that Mendelssohn beat, it seems like it was a strong addition of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, whether it's coming back on turf or dirt. My boy Jack Nels had 2 races again on dirt since the switch back. The Sham, he really was no match for McKinzie. He was third, but a well-beaten third, non-threatening third. And then he does this. Now the rail opened up. Perhaps he likes mud. Creative Cause is a young sire I like. My boy Jack is one to watch because he did look powerful in the stretch, which I like to see as we're heading to the Derby. But like the Risen Star, I'm not sure how much we can take out of this, considering the mud, considering the rail opening up and course condition, and maybe some horses who aren't at top tier level or weren't completely ready yet.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brian. I think from the Risen Star and the Southwest, I'm most interested in seeing what Sporting Chance does next time out.
Fair enough. Yeah, Sporting Chance is an interesting horse. The hopeful winner, which was an interesting race. Matt, another stakes race on the Derby Trail was run this weekend. It was out in the San Francisco, the Bay Area, and the Filly Paved. Now, Paved was a $320,000 two-year-old purchase for Eclipse Thoroughbred Partnership. Daughter Quality Road. Quality Road has quickly become a real sire of good fillies. Paved is a good-looking filly. Took her 3 races to break her maiden, although the first 2 were decent. And then the third race, maiden special weight and turf, Santa Anita against fillies, was very impressive. Fast time. She comes up to El Camino Real Derby, synthetic surface at Golden Gate against a bunch of colts. She becomes the first filly ever to win the El Camino Real Derby.
Yeah, and Paved is trained by Michael McCarthy, a former assistant for Todd Pletcher. So he's learned his craft in terms of getting horses ready to win stakes. Hey, Paved got a perfect ground-saving trip in there all the way around, heading for home around the final turn. Was tipped out, made a nice run down the outside to run down a horse who had been on the lead. I don't know what the plans they have next for this filly. Nice filly in the El Camino Real.
Yeah, Paved, I'm very interested in, actually. Certainly we're not talking, and neither are our connections talking about the Kentucky Derby. But, she's now proven herself on turf to some extent, proven herself on turf and a synthetic surface. Certainly the breeding there says dirt. She's a very attractive, a good-looking horse for sure. And I want to see her run on dirt, and I want to see her run again on turf. I think these last 2 races show that the ceiling is high. Not talking Kentucky Derby at all, but they are considering a run in the Santa Anita Oaks next time, which would be her first race on dirt, and then possibly the Kentucky Oaks. If not, they'll run her on turf next time, back in a stakes race in Southern California. So I think Paved is a filly we'll be looking for down the road, looking for good things, and maybe she's a Kentucky Oaks filly to talk about. Again, she made a little history by becoming the first filly to win that El Camino Real Derby. Having said that, I certainly don't think she was the most impressive 3-year-old filly to run this weekend, because Monomoy Girl returned. She was just a few feet from being an undefeated, very impressive juvenile filly. She was beaten late in the year in the Golden Rod narrowly by Road to Victory, but Monomoy Girl returned, and I was very impressive, Matt, the way she broke so bad. Generally, she had shown speed in her races, and then she just powered by a decent field in the Rachel Alexandra, which was on Risen Star Day.
Yeah, and we need to take into consideration what we were saying about the Risen Star, how in that race nobody was making up any ground in there yet. Monomoy Girl was forced to do that after a bad break. So a really nice performance from that one.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the 3 big dirt stakes Saturday at Fairgrounds, my old friend, the player, donning blinkers for the first time, dominated that field gate to wire. I think he might have dominated the field no matter where he was early in the Mineshaft handicap. But that, and then Bravazzo, Snapper, Sinclair. So the other 2 dirt stakes were really won on the front end. Similar times, too. So Monomoy Girl's performance, Breaking Bad, rallying on a track that might have favored speed a little bit. Impressive. She was already high on my Oaks list. Now I think she's even higher. Now let's get back to the Kentucky Derby, Matt, and we've had some interesting performances that weren't in the big prep races, but we got to start talking about some of these horses. First off, Santa Anita, I guess it was Sunday, we'd been waiting for the unveiling of Justify. He had been getting a lot of attention by the clockers in the morning, another Bob Baffert trainee. This is a son of Scat Daddy out of a Ghost Zapper mare. It was a $500,000 yearling purchase. As I said, working well for Baffert. Finally got to the racetrack Sunday at Santa Anita, and it was a wow performance.
It was definitely a wow performance. 7 furlongs. Justify won as easily as he wanted to. He went to 7 panels in 1:21.86. A very impressive time. First out, won the race by over 9 lengths. It's star-studded connections with WinStar and China Horse Club and Bob Baffert. 104 Beyer speed figure, which is the highest for any horse in that 3-year-old class.
Beyer tends to give higher Beyers in New York and Southern California. I'm not quite as much a believer as the Beyer speed figure as you are, but I can't argue with the strong number. That was obviously a big performance. He even broke a beat slow. He even had pressure the first quarter mile of the race. I think justified all the buzz he had going in. He was heavily favored in this pretty short field, but just dominant performance, and obviously a stakes horse. And February 18? That's a really, really late debut for a horse that they're talking about for the Kentucky Derby, but Baffert is saying all the right things. I told you before the race, maybe he's a little bit Indian Charlie-like, although Indian Charlie got even an earlier start, and he ended up finishing 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. Again, I'm dating myself, not a couple decades ago, but maybe this is an Indian Charlie type, ton of talent. We'll see him quickly. I think Baffert will try to get in 2 races before the Derby, because obviously Baffert likes this horse, and he wants to get him to the Triple Crown in one way or the other. So we wish him well on that road, but I don't know if I can be overly excited as far as the Kentucky Derby for a horse debuting on February 18.
Yeah, if you can read your Bob Baffert's, to me, it was really clear that he's very excited about this horse. There were no cagey answers. There were no ifs and questions about this performance with Mr. Baffert. He said he's got a plan for this one already.
Agreed, Matt. Justify is well liked by a lot of people, including his trainer, and certainly one to watch. I think another one to watch it came out of an odd place. I guess it was Thursday at Tampa Bay Downs. He was heavily bet, and it wasn't a bad little allowance field. Vouch was in there, but Magnum Moon, off a big maiden win in January, came back in allowance, 2 turns at Tampa Bay Downs. He only won by a few lengths, but it was impressive the way he leveled off in the stretch and really powered by late. This son of Malibu Moon, another high-priced yearling, he was $380,000 as a yearling out of an unbridled song mare. Magnum Moon, now 2 for 2, January, February, Gulfstream Park, Tampa Bay. Certainly to me looks like he's in the right direction, and I'm sure his next race will be a stakes race as well.
Yeah, this seems to be the pattern that Todd Pletcher is using this year. 2 races, a maiden, and then an allowance race, and then on to a Derby prep. And like you said, this son of Malibu Moon did it really easily. I like the way he rated. He kind of sat back in 4th place and then swung to the outside and really easily went by this field. Like you said, was a good field. Vouch was in there. And at one point, Vouch's rider looked back. I don't know if that was a look of confidence or a look back to see where Magnum Moon was, but it didn't matter. Magnum Moon was going to go by and win this race easily. Next stop for Magnum Moon, I think, is going to be in the Rebel Stakes. So we find out quickly what these what these Pletchers have when they hit the stakes races.
Right, and I don't think he by any means had the glitz of Justify, although his maiden race at Gulfstream was pretty visually impressive. This was a different kind of performance, but a performance I kind of like better, where I know he faced some decent horses around 2 turns, and he really showed that he could finish up well. Looks like a horse that can probably move on. He's bred for it too, to classic distances. Pletcher's had a ton of them again this year, but this one is one of the more interesting, intriguing, and impressive ones for me as a potential classic horse, Magnum Moon, Thursday at Tampa Bay Downs. And one other thing we got to talk from last week, Matt, it didn't happen in the United States, but don't look now, but Charlie Appleby has a real runner. Goldtown is a gelded son of Street Cry. You know what Street Cry has produced over the years. And he was a good turf horse last year in Europe. Not a great turf horse, but certainly a good turf horse, a stakes quality turf horse. Maybe in a vein of My Boy Jack, but Europe's probably a little tougher than My Boy Jack faced in America. But since he's taken to dirt, the gelded son of Street Cry really looks good. He won a trial impressively earlier in the year, and then the UAE Guinness, Matt, Goldtown just showed something as he actually battled for the lead for a while, and then he just drew away. Fast time for that track at Meydan. He has to head to the UAE Derby, Mendelssohn or not, as a pretty clear favorite in my eyes.
Yeah, Brian, and this was no maiden race, and this was no allowance race. This was a big field. I think there were 15 horses in there, and like you said, he won the race wire to wire, and for the beginning of the race, he was contested all the way along the back stretch. But when they turned for home, this horse put in a very, very impressive kick. William Buick asked him to go and urged him on, and he just exploded away from the field, opened up, I don't know, to me it looked like close to 10 lengths, and was eased up going across the finish line. Very, very strong, visually impressive performance. And like you said, the UAE Derby is a 100-pointer on the road to the Kentucky Derby to be run on March 31st on that same racetrack.
Absolutely. Goldtown will get a test at a bigger distance. That's about 1 mile and 3/16 the UAE Derby on Dubai World Cup night at the very end of March. Matt, I've always felt like sooner or later a Dubai 3-year-old will come over here and either win the Kentucky Derby or come really close, and it really hasn't happened yet. But Goldtown gives every indication of being a horse of quality. He obviously likes the dirt. He's obviously headed in the right direction. He obviously has the right breeding. He has strong connections. There's a lot to like about Goldtown. So we'll see how he does in the UAE Derby. But Goldtown is a horse that I now obviously have my eyes on, Matt. As I can say about Justify, Magnum Moon, paved not for the Derby, but paved for sure. Monomoy Girl, maybe those are Oaks fillies, My Boy Jack, and Bravazzo. So a lot of new faces now on the Kentucky Derby Trail. And Matt, for next week, there's no preps there's no Kentucky Derby preps this coming weekend. So next weekend, we're going to dive into a new top 10 list. We haven't done that in a while. And I'm wondering to see what you're going to have on your list, because there's got to be some changes with all these new faces that we highlighted this week.
Yeah, no doubt there will be changes. But the top two, Good Magic and Bolt Dora, will stay the same. And I am really looking forward to seeing them on the track to get a more realistic picture, maybe, of what to expect on the first Saturday in May.
And for me, it's Bolt Doro and Good Magic, but they're 1-2 as well, and that remains the same. That, in fact, I think there might be even farther ahead now after seeing some of the upsets recently. But yeah, we have to see them as 3-year-olds. They are unproven at 3 until they finally make it to the races. So we're looking forward to it, as we always do. We also look forward to seeing you each week here on Horse Center. Thanks, as always, for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation. We're sponsored by the best contest site out there, Derby Wars. Matt, let me get one more parting shot from you, sir.
Yeah, yay Derby Wars. I think maybe I'll play a Survivor tournament this weekend. And as always, I want to thank Brett Workman for producing our show.
Shout out to the sponsor. I love it. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, folks, for watching. We'll be back next week with a Kentucky Derby Top 10 show. See you then.